The walls that remember. They say a man's home is his castle. Mine was supposed to be my grave. I had the rope ready. The beam in the barn was strong. I'd reinforced it myself 30 years ago when Elena and I first bought this place. Funny how a man can prepare his own gallows without even knowing it. The knot was tied, the chair positioned just right beneath my feet. All I had to do was kick it away and this crushing weight in my chest would finally stop. But I didn't. Not because I wanted to live. God knows I didn't. I stood there for 3 hours, tears streaming down my face, talking to my dead wife like she could somehow pull me back from that edge. And maybe she did. Because in that moment, when my foot was hovering over the chair, ready to push it aside, I heard something. Not her voice, nothing so merciful as that. Just the creak of the floorboards above me in our bedroom. The same creak she'd make every morning when she'd get out of bed. That sound saved my life that night. And it would take me another year to understand why. Let me go back. Let me tell you how a father loses everything, even when he thinks there's nothing left to lose. Elena died on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were her favorite. She always said Tuesdays had no expectations, not the fresh start of Monday, not the hump day pressure of Wednesday. Just a quiet, honest day where you could be yourself. She died being herself, which I suppose is all any of us can hope for. A stroke. Quick and merciless. One moment she was deadheading roses in her garden, humming that old song she loved, and the next she was gone. The doctors said she didn't suffer. I've learned that's what doctors say when they have nothing else to offer. Pretty words for ugly truths. We'd been married 43 years. 43 years in this farmhouse 5 miles outside of town, with our chickens and our vegetable patch and our creaking porch swing that Elena insisted we never oil because she liked the sound it made. It's the house talking to us, she'd say. After she died, the house went silent. Our son James came to the funeral with his wife, Natalie. I hadn't seen him in 8 months, not since Christmas, when the conversation had been stilted and brief. Life gets busy, he'd said. Natalie's father has been helping us with some business opportunities. We're really focusing on our future right now. I'd nodded and smiled because that's what fathers do. We swallow our hurt and tell ourselves our children are just living their lives. At Elena's funeral, James cried. Real tears. I held him like I hadn't held him since he was a boy, and for a moment I had my son back. For a moment, I wasn't alone in this grief that felt like drowning. I'm so sorry, Dad, he whispered. I should have been around more. I should have brought Mom to more doctors. I should have. She wouldn't have gone, I told him, because it was true. Elena hated hospitals. Hated medicine. She believed in fresh air and hard work and the healing power of getting your hands dirty in the soil. This isn't on you, son. But I saw something flicker across his face then. Something I didn't recognize. He pulled away, wiped his eyes, and Natalie was suddenly there, her hand on his shoulder, steering him away from me. We'll talk later, Dad, James said. After things settle down. Things never settle down after someone dies. They just reshape around the hole that person left behind. James and Natalie stayed for a week after the funeral. At first I was grateful. The house felt less empty with them there, even though Natalie spent most of her time on phone calls in the guest room and James seemed distracted, always checking his phone, always somewhere else even when he was sitting right across from me at the kitchen table. It was on the 5th day that Natalie's father showed up. Gordon Mitchell. I'd met him twice before, once at James and Natalie's wedding, and once at a holiday dinner that had been so awkward I'd tried to forget it. He was one of those men who took up too much space in a room, not because of his size but because of his presence. Loud voice. Firm handshake. The kind of man who called himself an entrepreneur, which I'd learned was often code for someone who hadn't quite figured out how to make an honest living. I'm so sorry for your loss, Gordon said, crushing my hand in his grip. He was wearing a suit, to a farmhouse. Elena was a wonderful woman. Just wonderful. He'd met her exactly once. Thank you, I said, because what else do you say? Gordon didn't waste time. Within 10 minutes of arriving, he had his briefcase open on my kitchen table, Elena's kitchen table where we'd eaten thousands of meals together, spreading out papers and charts and projections. I want to talk to you about an opportunity, he said. James was standing behind him and I noticed my son wouldn't meet my eyes. An opportunity? I repeated. I'd been up since 4 in the morning, like always, even though the chickens had been sold and the garden was growing wild. Old habits. Old ghosts. I'm expanding my business, Gordon continued. His smile was all teeth. Commercial real estate development. I've got investors lined up, properties identified. This is going to be huge. But I need capital for the final push. I stared at him. I'm not sure what this has to do with me. Dad, James said quietly. It was the first word he'd spoken since Gordon arrived. We wanted to talk to you about the farm. The farm. This place. These walls where Elena had hung her grandmother's paintings. This porch where we'd watched sunsets for 43 years. This land where I'd scattered her ashes just 6 days ago. What about it? My voice came out harder than I intended. Gordon leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. This property is sitting on prime land. 5 acres, close to town, excellent access to the new highway expansion. I've had it appraised. You're sitting on at least $800,000, potentially more. The number hit me like a fist. $800,000. For what? For the place where my wife had lived and died? For the bedroom where we'd made love and made plans and made a life together? I'm not interested in selling, I said. Dad, just listen, James started. No. I stood up. My chair scraped against the floor, the same floor Elena had mopped every Saturday morning while listening to the radio. This isn't for sale. Gordon's smile didn't waver, but something cold entered his eyes. I understand this is a difficult time. But think about what that money could do. Think about your son's future. James and Natalie are young. They need help getting started. This business venture could set them up for life. Then get a bank loan like everyone else. Banks want collateral. They want... I said no. I looked at James. Really looked at him. Tell me you didn't know about this. Tell me you didn't bring your wife's father here to my home, 1 week after we buried your mother, to pressure me into selling. James's face flushed. It's not like that, Dad. It's just, we've been talking and this place is too much for you to handle alone. You're getting older. The upkeep, the isolation. I'm 68, not 90. But you're alone now, Natalie chimed in. She'd appeared in the doorway, her phone in her hand as always. This big house, all this land. What are you going to do with it? Rattle around in empty rooms talking to ghosts? The word struck something deep and vicious in my chest. Get out, I said quietly. Dad. Get out. The roar came from somewhere I didn't recognize. Get out of this house. All of you. Now. Gordon gathered his papers with exaggerated calm, making a show of being the reasonable one. Think about it, Walter. That's all we're asking. Just think about what's best for everyone. What's best for everyone, I repeated. The laugh that came out of me was bitter and broken. You want to know what's best? What's best is my son remembering that his mother is barely cold in the ground. What's best is some respect for the woman who raised him in this house. Dad, I loved Mom, James tried. Then act like it. Your mother and I built this place from nothing. We painted every wall. We planted every tree. This is where we brought you home from the hospital. This is where she taught you to ride a bike, where she baked your birthday cakes, where she, my voice broke, where she died. And you want me to sell it so your father-in-law can flip it for profit. It's not about profit, James said. It's about family. About helping each other. Mom would have wanted. Don't. I pointed at him, my hand shaking. Don't you dare tell me what your mother would have wanted. You didn't visit. You didn't call. You were too busy with your business opportunities and your new family to spend time with her when she was alive. You don't get to use her memory to manipulate me now. The silence that followed was crushing. Natalie broke it first. We should go. She looked at her father. He's clearly not in a place to think rationally about this. They left. All 3 of them. But James turned back at the door. I'm sorry, Dad, he said. I really am. But think about it. Please. This could change everything for us. Then he was gone, and I was alone again in Elena's kitchen, with my hands shaking and my heart racing and the house creaking around me like it was morning too. That night I went to the barn with the rope. I'd thought about it before, of course. In the first days after Elena died, when the grief was so heavy I could barely breathe. But I told myself I needed to be strong. I needed to handle the funeral, the paperwork, all the mundane horrors that come with death. But standing there in my kitchen, after my son had revealed himself to be a stranger, after the walls of my home had been appraised and reduced to a dollar amount, I just wanted it to stop. All of it. The rope was easy to tie. I'd been a farmer my whole life. I knew knots. I stood on that chair for 3 hours. Elena's old work jacket was hanging on a hook nearby, and I could still smell her on it, lavender soap and earth and that indefinable scent that was just her. I talked to her in the darkness, asked her what I should do, begged her to give me a reason to step down from that chair. And then the floorboards creaked. Just once. Just that familiar sound of her getting out of bed. I broke down. Sobbed like a child. Climbed down from that chair and collapsed on the barn floor and cried until there was nothing left inside me but a hollow ache. When I finally went back inside, the sun was coming up. Tuesday morning. Elena's favorite. I made coffee. Sat on the porch swing listening to it creak. And I made a decision. James called 2 weeks later. "Dad," he said. His voice was tight. Stressed. "We need to talk." "I'm not selling," I said immediately. "Dad, please. Just hear me out. Gordon's investors are getting impatient. They need to know if we're in or out. If we miss this window, then you miss it. It's not that simple." His voice rose. "We've already committed. We've put down deposits, signed contracts. Gordon said the farmhouse sale was guaranteed. If we can't deliver..." If he told his investors that my property was guaranteed, that's his problem, not mine. "But it affects me," James shouted. "Don't you get that? Natalie and I have invested everything. Our savings, our future. If this falls through..." "You invested in something using my property as collateral without my permission?" Silence. "James?" My voice was very calm. Very quiet. "Tell me you didn't do something that stupid." "Gordon said it would be fine. He said you'd come around once you had time to think clearly." He said. "Gordon lied to you. Or you lied to yourself. Either way, it's not my problem." "How can you say that?" His voice cracked. "I'm your son. And that farmhouse was your mother's dream. She chose every paint color. She planted every flower. She's dead, Dad." James screamed. "She's dead. And you're choosing a house over your living son. You're choosing dead walls and empty rooms over my future." The words hung in the air between us. "Is that really what you think?" I asked quietly. "That I'm choosing a house over you? What else am I supposed to think? You'd rather cling to the past than help your own family." "No," I said. "I'd rather honor your mother's memory than enable your wife's father to use you as a pawn in his schemes. There's a difference. This is unbelievable." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Mom always said you were stubborn. But I thought when it really mattered, you'd choose us." "I'm choosing us, James. I'm choosing the us that existed before Gordon Mitchell came into our lives. The us that your mother built in that farmhouse." "Well, she's not here to build anything anymore," he said coldly. "And neither are you, apparently." He hung up. They showed up 3 days later. All of them, James, Natalie, and Gordon. I saw the car pull up the long driveway, and something in my gut told me this wasn't going to be a conversation. This was going to be a siege. I met them on the porch. Didn't invite them in. "Dad," James said. He looked terrible. Hadn't shaved, dark circles under his eyes. "We need to settle this. Today." "There's nothing to settle." "My answer is no." "Then we'll buy you out," Gordon interjected smoothly. "We'll give you fair market value. You can use that money to buy a nice condo in town, closer to amenities, easier to maintain. You'd be comfortable and we'd..." "No. Dad, please." Natalie stepped forward. She'd been crying. I could see the mascara tracks on her cheeks. "My father has creditors calling. People he owes money to. If this deal doesn't go through, he could lose everything. We could lose everything." "Then I guess you should have thought of that before you bet the farm." I paused. "Literally." Gordon's mask slipped then. Just for a moment I saw the desperation underneath. "You're being unreasonable, old man. That property is wasted on you. You're just one person living in the past while your son's future hangs in the balance." "My son's future isn't my responsibility," I said. "He's a grown man. He made his choices. Choices you're sabotaging." Gordon's voice rose. "Do you have any idea what you're doing? Do you know what happens when a business deal like this collapses? It's not just money. It's reputation. It's relationships. People get hurt." "People are already hurt," I said, looking at James. "I'm looking at one of them right now." James's face hardened. "If that's how you feel, then fine. Fine." He turned to Natalie. "Get my stuff." "James?" "No, he's made his choice. Dead walls matter more than living family. That's his priority." Natalie went inside. I didn't stop her. A few minutes later, she came out dragging a suitcase, the one James had brought for the funeral, the one that had been sitting in the guest room ever since. James grabbed it and then he threw it. Hurled it off the porch into the dirt driveway. It burst open, clothes spilling everywhere. "There," he shouted. "There's your legacy, Dad. A bitter old man alone in a dead woman's house. I hope it keeps you warm at night. I hope those memories taste good when you're eating dinner by yourself for the rest of your miserable life." "James," I started. "I'm done. We're done." You want to worship at the altar of Mom's memory? Fine. But don't expect me to be there with you. Don't call me. Don't write. As far as I'm concerned, I'm an orphan now. He got in the car. Natalie followed after giving me one last pleading look. Gordon was the last to leave. You'll regret this, he said quietly. When you're alone and dying in that house, you'll remember that you chose pride over family. And it'll be too late. Then they were gone, dust from the driveway settling in the afternoon sun. I stood there for a long time, looking at James's clothes scattered in the dirt. Elena's favorite shirt was among them, a blue flannel I'd given him years ago, that she'd lovingly patched and repatched. I picked it up, brushed off the dust and took it inside. That night I didn't go to the barn. I sat in Elena's garden, in the chair she'd died in, and I cried until the stars came out. But I didn't regret my decision. Not even a little bit. The first month was the hardest. I'd wake up every morning expecting to hear Elena in the kitchen, or to get a call from James checking in. But the house stayed silent and the phone never rang. I threw myself into work. Fixed the fence posts that had been leaning for years. Repainted the barn doors. Cleaned out the gutters. Anything to keep my hands busy and my mind from wandering into the dark places it wanted to go. People in town had heard about the falling out, of course. Small towns are like that. Secrets travel faster than truth. The looks I got at the grocery store ranged from pitying to judgmental. Old Frank at the hardware store actually said, "Heard you chose a house over your boy." That true. I chose my wife's memory over greed, I told him. There's a difference. He didn't agree, but he didn't argue either. The isolation was crushing. I'd had friends once, couples Elena and I would have over for dinner, neighbors we'd help with harvest. But after she died, people drifted away. They didn't know what to say, I suppose. And now, with James gone, I was truly alone. I started talking to Elena more. Out loud in the house. You think I did the right thing? I'd ask the empty kitchen. Because it sure as hell doesn't feel right. The house never answered. But sometimes in the quiet moments I'd swear I could hear her humming. That old song. The one she'd been humming when she died. 3 months after James left, I got a letter. Not from him. From a lawyer. James and Natalie were suing me for elder abuse and financial manipulation. They claimed I was mentally unfit to manage my own affairs and that the farmhouse should be placed in a conservatorship, with James as the conservator. I sat at the kitchen table, reading the legal language over and over, trying to make sense of it. My own son was trying to have me declared incompetent so he could take my home. I hired a lawyer. Cost me $5,000 I didn't really have. But she was good, a sharp woman named Patricia who listened to my story without judgment. They don't have a case, she said. You're clearly competent. You maintain your property, handle your finances, live independently. This is a cash grab, plain and simple. Can they do this? Legally? They can try. And it'll cost you money to fight it. Which I suspect is part of their strategy, bleed you dry until you give up and sell. I'm not selling. She smiled grimly. Good. Then let's show them what a competent old man looks like when he's angry. The case took 6 months to resolve. 6 months of depositions and doctor's visits and psychological evaluations to prove I wasn't senile or confused or being manipulated by anyone. James never came to court himself. Sent lawyers. Sent paperwork. But never showed his face. In the end, the judge threw the case out. Said it was frivolous and potentially brought in bad faith. Ordered James and Natalie to pay my legal fees. I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty. Patricia said something to me that last day in court. Your son is in over his head with some bad people. Gordon Mitchell has a reputation. This won't be the end of it. She was right. 6 months later, I heard through the town grapevine that Gordon's business had collapsed. The commercial development deal had fallen through. Investors had pulled out. And Gordon, facing debts and angry creditors, had fled. Just disappeared one night, taking whatever money was left. He'd cleaned out the business accounts, including the money James and Natalie had invested. My son was ruined. Bankrupt. Homeless. I heard this all secondhand, from Frank at the hardware store, from Judy at the diner, from Pastor Tom at church. Everyone wanted to see how I'd react. Would I gloat? Would I say I told you so? I didn't say anything. I just went home to the farmhouse and sat in Elena's chair and wept. Not because I was happy. Because I'd been right, and being right had cost my son everything. He showed up on a Tuesday. Elena's favorite day. A year almost to the day after her funeral. I was in the garden pulling weeds when I heard the car. Old Honda, engine knocking. It stopped at the end of the driveway and James got out. He looked like hell. Thin. haggard, wearing clothes that didn't fit right, probably thrift store finds. He walked slowly up the driveway, hands in his pockets, looking at everything except me. "Hi, Dad," he said quietly. I stood up, dirt on my knees, Elena's old gardening gloves on my hands. "James? I guess you heard." "I heard." He nodded, still not meeting my eyes. "Gordon took everything. Every penny. Natalie left me. Said I was a failure and she didn't sign up to be poor." He laughed, bitter and broken. "Guess I wasn't much of a catch without Daddy's money." "I'm sorry," I said. "And I meant it." "Are you?" His eyes finally met mine. "You tried to warn me. You tried to tell me Gordon was bad news. But I didn't listen. I chose him over you. I chose money over family. You chose wrong," I agreed. "But you're still my son." His face crumpled. "I'm homeless, Dad. I've been living in my car for 2 weeks. I lost the apartment, lost everything. I didn't know where else to go." He looked at the farmhouse and I saw hope flicker in his eyes. "I know I don't deserve it," he said quickly. "I know I said terrible things. I know I hurt you. But I thought, maybe, could I stay here? Just for a little while? Until I get back on my feet." I looked at him. Really looked at him. My son. Elena's son. The boy we'd raised in this house. The man who'd thrown it all away for a promise of easy money. "No," I said quietly. The hope died in his eyes. "Dad, please? Let me show you something." I walked toward the house and after a moment he followed. But I didn't go to the front door. I led him around the side to where the old sign used to hang. Where Elena's garden sign had read Elena's Sanctuary. Now there was a new sign. Fresh paint. Professional lettering. "Hope House Children's Home," James read aloud. He looked at me confused. "What?" "After you left, I did a lot of thinking," I said. "About this house. About what Elena would have wanted. About what matters." I opened the side door and children's laughter spilled out. The sound was like sunlight. Inside, the farmhouse was transformed. The living room was filled with toys and books. The dining room had a long table with 12 chairs, all of them occupied by children of varying ages eating lunch. The walls were painted bright colors, covered in children's artwork. A woman approached, Linda, the administrator I'd hired. "Walter, I didn't know you were bringing a guest." "This is my son James," I said. "James, this is Linda. She runs Hope House." James stared. "I don't understand. What is this?" "This is what I did with the farmhouse," I said. "I turned it into a home for foster children. Kids who have nowhere else to go. Kids who need a safe place." "But how? When?" "Started planning it the day after you left. Took 8 months to get through all the licensing and regulations. We opened 3 months ago. We have 10 children living here now with room for 2 more. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, ran up to me. "Mr. Walter, can we have cookies after lunch?" "If you eat your vegetables," I told her. She grinned and ran back to the table. James was pale. "You gave away the house. The house you said was Mom's memory, her dream. You just gave it away." "No," I said firmly. "I fulfilled her dream. Elena and I always talked about doing something like this. When we couldn't have more children after you, she used to say this house was too big for just 3 people. That it should be filled with kids and laughter. We just never had the courage to do it. I watched another child, a boy about 10, help a younger kid reach the water pitcher. These walls aren't dead, James. They're alive. Every day these kids wake up in Elena's room, in your old room, in the guest room. They eat breakfast in her kitchen. They play in her garden. This house is doing exactly what she wanted, giving children a home. But what about me?" James's voice broke. "I'm your son. Don't I deserve?" "Deserve?" The word came out harder than I intended. "You're right. Let's talk about what you deserve. You wanted this house sold so you could fund a business scheme. You sued me. You called me senile and incompetent. You threw your luggage in the dirt and told me you hoped I died alone. I was desperate. So are these kids." I gestured to the children. "That girl? Eva? Her parents died in a car crash. That boy? Marcus? He was in 7 foster homes before he turned 9. They're desperate too. But they didn't have anyone to turn to. No father with a farmhouse. No family at all. So this is punishment," James said flatly. "You're punishing me." "No. I'm teaching you. The same thing your mother tried to teach you your whole life. That family isn't just blood. That home isn't just walls and property. That what matters is what you do with what you have." A tear ran down his cheek. "I have nothing left, Dad. Nothing." Then you're finally in a position to understand what really matters. Linda approached again, this time with a kind but firm expression. Walter, I hate to interrupt, but we have the county inspector coming at 2. Right? I turned to James. I need to go. But James, this house is serving its purpose now. It's not for sale. It never will be. These kids need it more than either of us ever did. So where am I supposed to go? His voice was small, broken. I pulled out my wallet and handed him some bills. There's a motel on Route 9. It's cheap but clean. This should cover a week. Use that time to figure things out. Apply for jobs. Call social services if you need help. That's it? A motel? It's more than those kids had before they came here. I started to walk away, then stopped. Turned back. James, I'm not doing this to be cruel. I'm doing this because your mother and I failed you somehow. We raised you to believe that things matter more than people. That property equals security. That money equals worth. And I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry we didn't teach you better. You're sorry? He laughed, tears streaming now. You're giving my inheritance to strangers and you're apologizing to me? I'm not giving them your inheritance. I'm giving them a chance. Same chance your mother and I got when we bought this place 43 years ago, the chance to build something that matters. Behind us, inside the house, the children were singing something. A nursery rhyme. Off-key and enthusiastic and perfect. This is what your mother wanted, James. Not the house itself. The love inside it. The life inside it. I'm just finally brave enough to see that. I walked away then. Left my son standing in the driveway of his childhood home, now transformed into something bigger than either of us. That night, I sat on the porch swing, Elena's porch swing, and watched the sunset. Inside, I could hear Linda getting the children ready for bed. Story time. Laughter. The sound of little feet running on the floors where Elena used to walk. My phone buzzed. A text from James, I hate you. 3 words. Simple and devastating. I wrote back, I know. But I love you. And when you're ready to understand why I did this, I'll be here. He didn't respond. 6 months passed. Hope House flourished. The children thrived. I moved into a small apartment in town, gave my bedroom to a pair of teenage sisters who'd been separated in different foster homes for years. Watching them hug each other every morning made every sacrifice worth it. I volunteered at the house every day. Fixed things, helped with homework, taught some of the older kids basic carpentry. They called me Mr. Walter or sometimes just Walter. One little boy, the youngest, started calling me Grandpa. I didn't correct him. I heard nothing from James. Rumors filtered through town. He'd gotten a job at a warehouse. He was renting a room in a boarding house. He'd started going to AA meetings, though I'd never known him to have a drinking problem. Maybe rock bottom had edges I didn't know about. Then one Tuesday, of course it was a Tuesday, he showed up at Hope House. I was in the backyard building a treehouse with 3 of the kids. James stood at the fence watching. He looked better. Still thin but cleaner. Steadier. Hi Dad, he said. The kids immediately sensed the tension and scattered, running inside with excuses about needing snacks. James? I climbed down from the ladder. How are you? Better. Worse. Different. He gave a weak smile. I got a job. It's not much, warehouse work, night shift, but it's honest. That's good. Yeah. He looked at the half-built treehouse. I remember when you built one for me. In that big oak tree by the barn. You spent every summer in it. Until I outgrew it. He met my eyes. I've been thinking a lot about that. About outgrowing things. About what happens when you realize you've been living wrong. James? No, let me say this. He took a breath. You were right. About everything. Gordon was a con man. Natalie was using me. I was so desperate to prove I was successful, to show Mom and you that I'd made something of myself, that I didn't see I was becoming someone she'd be ashamed of. The admission hung between us. Your mother was never ashamed of you, I said quietly. Disappointed sometimes, maybe. Worried. But never ashamed. But I should have been ashamed of me. He looked at the house. I came here today because I wanted to see it. What you'd done. I've been driving past sometimes, seeing the kids playing in the yard, and I needed to see it up close. Want a tour? He hesitated, then nodded. I showed him everything. Elena's room, now home to 2 sisters who'd been abandoned at a bus station. His old room where a boy with autism found peace in the familiar walls. The kitchen where we'd eaten as a family, now feeding 12 children every meal. The dining room was full of noise and chaos, kids arguing over whose turn it was to clear the table, Linda trying to mediate, one little girl crying because someone had taken her favorite fork. This was Mom's formal dining room, James said. She only used this table for holidays. Now it's used 3 times a day every day. I watched a teenage boy comfort the crying girl, returning her fork with a gentle apology. Your mother would have loved this. James was quiet for a long moment. Then, can I ask you something? Of course. Why didn't you just give me the house? If you were going to turn it into a charity anyway, why not let me sell it, take the money? At least then it would have stayed in the family. I thought carefully about my answer. Because you needed to lose everything to understand what matters. If I'd sold it for you, you'd have learned nothing. You'd have taken the money, gambled it on another Gordon Mitchell scheme, and ended up right where you are now, but with no chance of redemption. That's pretty harsh parenting. Your mother and I were always too soft on you. Gave you everything you wanted. Never made you struggle. Never made you fail. I put my hand on his shoulder. This? What you've been through this past year. This is the most important education of your life. And I'm sorry I couldn't give it to you any other way. His eyes were wet. I've been so angry at you. I know. I still am, sometimes. When I wake up in that shitty room going to a job that pays minimum wage, eating ramen for dinner, I think about this house. About the money. About how different my life could be. And then I think about Mom. About what she'd say if she could see me now. He wiped his eyes. She'd probably say I'm finally growing up. A little girl, Ava, the one who'd lost her parents, came running out to the backyard. Mr. Walter. Mr. Walter. I finished my homework. Can I have my cookie now? She stopped short when she saw James, suddenly shy. Ava, this is my son James, I said gently. James, this is Ava. Hi, Ava said quietly, half hiding behind my leg. Hi Ava, James said, crouching down to her level. What kind of homework did you finish? Math. I hate math. But Mr. Walter says if I do my homework I get cookies and I really like cookies. James smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him in over a year. That seems like a fair deal. What kind of cookies? Chocolate chip. Mrs. Linda makes them from scratch. They're the best cookies in the whole world. In the whole world? James looked up at me. That's pretty impressive. Mrs. Linda uses your grandmother's recipe, I told him. From the blue recipe box. Something shifted in James's expression. Elena's recipe box had been sacred. She'd collected recipes her whole life, from her mother, from magazines, from friends. That blue metal box had been her treasure. You kept it, James said softly. Of course I kept it. It's in the kitchen. Linda uses it every day. Ava tugged on my sleeve. Can I have my cookie now? Go ask Mrs. Linda. Tell her I said you earned it. She ran off and James stood up slowly. You gave them everything. Her recipes. Her rooms. Her garden. All of it. I didn't give it away, I corrected. I put it to use. There's a difference. Is there? He looked at me and there was something raw in his expression. Because from where I'm standing it looks like you replaced me. Replaced your family. These kids get to live in my house, eat my grandmother's cookies, sleep in my room. They get everything I lost. They get what they need, I said firmly. Same as you're getting what you need, a lesson in humility and hard work. You sound like a fortune cookie. I sound like your mother. She said the same thing to me once, when I was young and stupid and thought money solved everything. James looked surprised. You've never cared about money? Not always. When we first got married I was obsessed with it. Worked 3 jobs, never home, convinced I needed to provide more and more. Your mother sat me down one day and said, I don't need a rich husband. I need a present one. I smiled at the memory. Changed my whole perspective. Quit 2 of those jobs, started farming full-time. Best decision I ever made. She never told me that story. She wouldn't have. Your mother didn't believe in living in the past. She believed in learning from it and moving forward. We stood there in silence, watching the kids play on the swing set Elena had picked out from a catalog 20 years ago. Can I come back? James asked quietly. Not to stay. Just to visit sometimes. To see what you've built here. This isn't a museum, James. You don't need permission to visit. After everything I said, everything I did. You're still my son. That never changed. What changed is that I finally understood what your mother knew all along, that love means doing what's right, not what's easy. He nodded, not trusting himself to speak. There's something else, I said. We need volunteers. People to help with homework, to play with the kids, to just be present. Linda's good, but she can't be everywhere at once. You want me to volunteer? James looked stunned. Only if you want to. No pressure. No obligation. But if you're looking for a way to understand what I did, why I did it, spending time with these kids might help. I don't know anything about kids. Neither did I before you were born. We figure it out as we go. James started coming by on Tuesdays. At first he was awkward, uncertain. He'd sit in the corner of the living room while the kids played, watching but not participating. Linda said he always asked permission before touching anything, like he was a guest in a stranger's home. But slowly something shifted. It started with Tommy, the 10-year-old who'd been in 7 foster homes. Tommy was quiet, withdrawn, always watching the adults with suspicious eyes. He'd learned early that the people who were supposed to take care of you often didn't. One Tuesday, Tommy was struggling with his math homework. Fractions. He'd been staring at the same problem for 20 minutes, getting more and more frustrated. James happened to walk by. Saw the kid's distress. Fractions, huh? James said. Those are the worst. Tommy looked up, wary. You know math. I used to. Might be rusty, but I can try to help if you want. Tommy hesitated, then pushed the paper toward him. I don't get it. How can a half plus a third equal something that's not even a whole number? James pulled up a chair. For the next hour, I watched from the kitchen as my son explained fractions using pieces of Linda's chocolate chip cookies. Breaking them into halves, thirds, six. Making it tangible and real. By the end, Tommy was smiling. Actually smiling. Thanks, the kid said. That actually made sense. No problem. I'll be back next Tuesday if you need more help. Really? Really? After that, Tuesday became James's regular day. He'd come straight from work, still in his warehouse uniform, smelling of cardboard and sweat, and spend 2 hours with the kids. Helping with homework. Playing board games. Fixing broken toys. And slowly, week by week, I watched my son heal. 3 months into his volunteering, something happened that changed everything. It was a Tuesday evening, just after dinner. James was in the backyard with Tommy and 2 other boys, trying to fix the old lawnmower. Elena had bought that mower 15 years ago, and it had been temperamental even then. I was in the kitchen with Linda going over supply orders when we heard shouting. It's not my fault. Yes it is. You broke it. I was just trying to help. We rushed outside to find Tommy in tears, the lawnmower in pieces, and James standing between the crying boy and the 2 other kids. What happened? Linda asked. Tommy tried to fix the mower and made it worse, one of the boys said. Now it's totally broken. I said I was sorry. Tommy shouted. I didn't mean to. Sorry doesn't fix it, the other boy yelled back. Hey. James's voice cut through the chaos. That's enough. All of you. The boys went quiet. James knelt down in front of Tommy. Did you try to fix it? Tommy nodded, tears streaming down his face. You said we should try to fix things ourselves before asking for help. I thought I could do it. But I just made it worse. I always make things worse. The despair in that last sentence hit me like a fist. This kid believed he ruined everything he touched. James was quiet for a moment. Then he said, You know what? I made something worse too. Something way bigger than a lawnmower. Tommy looked up, confused. What? My relationship with my dad. James glanced at me, then back at Tommy. When my mom died, my dad wanted to keep our family house. But I wanted him to sell it so I could use the money for a business. We fought about it. I said terrible things. I told him I hated him. I sued him. I tried to take the house away from him. The other boys had gone quiet, listening. And you know what happened? The business failed. I lost all my money. I ended up with nothing. And it was all my fault because I'd been so focused on what I wanted that I didn't think about what was right. What did you do? Tommy asked. I lost everything. Had to start over from nothing. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. James put his hand on Tommy's shoulder. But you know what I learned? Making mistakes doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you human. What matters is what you do after. But the lawnmower is just a thing. Things can be replaced. People can't. James looked at the other boys. Tommy made a mistake trying to help. That's better than not trying at all. Instead of being mad at him, why don't we all work together to fix it? There was a moment of silence. Then one of the boys said, I guess we were pretty mean. Yeah, the other admitted. Sorry, Tommy. Tommy wiped his eyes. You really sued your dad? James laughed. Yeah. Not my proudest moment. But he still lets you come here? Yeah. Because that's what family does. They forgive you even when you don't deserve it. Tommy looked at me. Is that true, Mr. Walter? It's true, I said, my voice rough with emotion. That night, after the kids were in bed, James and I sat on the porch swing. The same swing where Elena and I had sat for 43 years. "Thank you," I said. "For what?" "For being honest with Tommy. For showing him that mistakes aren't the end of the world." James was quiet for a long time. "I've been thinking about what you said. About me needing to lose everything to learn what matters. I hated you for it. But watching these kids, seeing how they have nothing but they're still trying, still hoping. I get it now." "Get what?" "Why you did it. Why you gave the house to them instead of selling it to save me." He looked at me. "Because if you'd saved me, I never would have learned to save myself. You were always capable of saving yourself, James. You just needed a reason to try." "I'm sorry, Dad. For everything. For what I said, what I did. For choosing money over family. For—" "Stop." I put my hand on his. "I forgave you the day you walked away. I just needed you to forgive yourself." He started crying then. Not the angry, bitter tears of before, but something deeper. A release of all the pain and shame and regret he'd been carrying. I held my son while he cried, the way Elena used to hold him when he was little and the world seemed too big and scary. "Your mother would be proud of you," I said. "Not of what you did, but of who you're becoming." "You think so?" "I know so." 6 months later, James moved out of his boarding house and into a small apartment. Nothing fancy, 1 bedroom, leaky faucet, neighbors who fought at night. But it was his. Earned with his own money, his own work. He kept coming to Hope House every Tuesday. Started coming on Saturdays too. The kids adored him. Especially Tommy, who'd attached himself to James like a shadow. "You know," Linda said one day, "Tommy keeps asking if James is going to adopt him." "What?" "He asked me this morning if grown-ups can adopt kids even if they don't have a lot of money." I found James in the backyard teaching Tommy how to build a birdhouse. The same way I taught James 30 years ago. "Linda says Tommy has been asking about adoption," I said. James's hand stilled on the wood. "Yeah. He mentioned it to me too." "What did you tell him?" "The truth. That I live in a tiny apartment, work nights at a warehouse and can barely afford to feed myself, let alone a kid." He resumed sanding. "But I also told him that if I ever got to a place where I could provide a stable home, he'd be the first person I'd call." "You mean that?" "Yeah." James looked at Tommy, who was concentrating intensely on hammering a nail. "These kids, they get under your skin, you know? They make you want to be better. That's what your mother used to say about you." He smiled. "Think she'd approve? Of me wanting to adopt someday? I think she'd be thrilled." 2 years after James first walked back into my life, Hope House celebrated its 3rd anniversary. We'd expanded, added a new wing, increased capacity to 15 children. The community had rallied around us, donating money and time. The local schools gave us priority enrollment. Businesses offered job training programs for the older kids. Elena's farmhouse had become exactly what she'd always dreamed, a place of life and love and second chances. The anniversary party was held on a Tuesday, of course. The yard was full of people. Current residents, former residents who'd aged out of the system, volunteers, donors, and community members. James was there with Tommy. They'd become inseparable. James had been going through the foster parent certification process. It would be another year before he could officially adopt, but everyone knew it was just a matter of time. "Speech," someone called out. "Walter, give us a speech." I hadn't prepared anything. But I stood up on the porch, Elena's porch, and looked at all the faces gathered there. 3 years ago, I almost ended my life in that barn. The crowd went silent. My wife had died. My son had walked away. This house felt like a tomb. I couldn't see any reason to keep going. I looked at James, at Tommy, at all the children who'd passed through these doors. But something stopped me. A sound. A memory. A ghost maybe. And I decided to try one more day. That one day turned into a week. A month. A year. And in that time I learned something important. I paused. Houses aren't made of walls and wood. They're made of the people inside them. The love they share. The memories they create. My wife knew that. She tried to teach me. But I was too stubborn, too scared of losing the physical place to understand what she meant. I smiled. Then life forced me to choose. Keep the house as a shrine to the past, or transform it into something that honors her memory by helping people who need it most. I chose transformation. And in doing so I found purpose again. I found family again. I looked at James. Not the family I lost, but the family that grew from that loss. There wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. James stood up. "Can I say something?" I nodded. 3 years ago, I was the worst version of myself, James said. Greedy, selfish, cruel. I said things to my father that I'll regret for the rest of my life. I chose money over love. I chose pride over family. And my father let me fall. He didn't catch me. He didn't save me. He let me hit rock bottom. James's voice cracked. At the time, I thought it was the cruelest thing he could do. But now I understand it was the kindest. Because if he'd sold this house to save me, I never would have learned to save myself. I never would have found my way back. I never would have met Tommy. He put his hand on the boy's shoulder. I never would have understood what my mother tried to teach me my whole life. That family isn't about blood or property or money. It's about showing up. Being present. Choosing love even when it's hard. Tommy looked up at James with pure adoration. So thank you, Dad, James continued. For being strong enough to let me fail. For being brave enough to transform grief into purpose. For showing me that the best way to honor Mom's memory is to live the values she believed in. He sat down and I saw my son, really saw him, for the first time in years. Not the angry, desperate man who'd thrown luggage in the dirt. Not the broken man who'd shown up homeless and pleading. But the man Elena and I had always hoped he'd become. That night, after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet, I walked through the rooms one last time. Elena's bedroom, where two teenage sisters slept peacefully. James's old room, where Marcus dreamed of adoption. The kitchen where Linda would make breakfast in the morning using Elena's recipes. The living room where children laughed and played and felt safe for the first time in their lives. I ended up in the garden. Elena's garden. It had grown wild after she died, but Linda and the kids had brought it back to life. Roses and vegetables and wildflowers all growing together in chaotic beauty. Did we do right? I asked the night air. Asked Elena's ghost. Asked the universe. The wind rustled the leaves. A nightbird called out. The house creaked behind me. And I swear just for a moment I heard her humming. That old song. The one she'd been humming when she died. We did good, I whispered. We did real good. 5 years after Elena's death, James adopted Tommy. The courtroom was packed. Linda brought half the kids from Hope House. I sat in the front row crying like a baby. The judge smiled as she signed the papers. Congratulations. You're officially a family. Tommy, now 15, looked at James with tears streaming down his face. I can call you Dad now? You could always call me Dad, James said. But yeah, now it's official. They hugged and I thought about Elena. About how she'd always said that family wasn't about biology but about choice. About choosing to love someone, to show up for them, to build a life together. After the hearing we went back to the farmhouse, to Hope House, for a celebration. Tommy ran around showing the other kids his adoption certificate like it was a trophy. James and I stood on the porch watching. Think Mom's watching? James asked. I know she is. What do you think she'd say? I thought about Elena. About her laugh and her kindness and her absolute conviction that love was the only thing that mattered. She'd say you finally figured it out. Figured what out? That home isn't a place. It's people. It's choosing to show up. It's turning pain into purpose. I looked at the house. Our house, Elena's house, everybody's house. It's these dead walls you once hated, filled with life you helped create. James laughed. Dead walls. God, I can't believe I said that. You meant it at the time. I was an idiot at the time. You were lost. There's a difference. We stood there in comfortable silence, watching Tommy play with the other kids. Watching Linda bring out cake. Watching the sun set over the farm that had witnessed so much love and loss and transformation. Dad. James said quietly. Yeah. Thank you. For not giving up on me. For not giving me what I wanted and instead giving me what I needed. That's what fathers do. No, he said firmly. That's what great fathers do. And I'm going to try to be half as good with Tommy as you were with me. You're already better than I ever was, I said honestly. Because you learned from my mistakes. That's all any parent can hope for, that their kids do better than they did. 10 years after Elena's death I got sick. Cancer. The kind that doesn't care how many good deeds you've done or how many children you've helped. The kind that just takes and takes until there's nothing left. I kept working at Hope House as long as I could. But eventually I had to admit I needed help. James insisted I move in with him and Tommy. They'd gotten a bigger place, a real house with a yard. Tommy was in college now, studying social work. He wanted to run a group home someday like Hope House. I can't leave, I protested. The kids need me. The kids need you alive, James said firmly. And you need treatment. Real treatment. which means moving in with us where we can take care of you. So I did. Left the apartment in town and moved into James's house. Into the guest room that Tommy had helped decorate, picking out curtains he thought I'd like. The treatment was brutal. Chemo that left me weak and sick. Days where I couldn't get out of bed. Nights where the pain was so bad I wished for the rope in the barn and the piece I'd almost found 10 years ago. But James was there. Every day. Helping me to the bathroom. Bringing me food I couldn't eat. Sitting with me in the darkness when the anxiety got too bad. "I've got you, Dad," he'd say. "Just like you had me." One particularly bad night, when I was sure I wouldn't see morning, I said, "I'm sorry." "For what?" "For not being there enough when you were young. For working too much. For not teaching you better. For..." "Dad, stop. You were a great father. I let you become someone your mother wouldn't recognize. And then you helped me become someone she'd be proud of." James held my hand. "You gave me the greatest gift. You let me fail. You let me learn. You trusted me to find my way back. Not many fathers are that brave." I was terrified. "I know. But you did it anyway. That's what courage is." I didn't die that night. Or the next. Or the one after that. The cancer went into remission. The doctors called it a miracle. I called it stubbornness. Elena had always said I was too stubborn to die on schedule. When I was finally strong enough, I went back to Hope House. The kids mobbed me. Ava, now 16 and preparing for college, cried into my shoulder. Tommy drove me there himself, grinning the whole way. Linda had kept the place running perfectly. But she said it hadn't been the same without me. "Their Grandpa Walter," she said. Grandpa Walter. Somehow over the years that's what I'd become. Not to my biological grandchildren. James and Tommy had talked about adoption again, maybe giving Tommy siblings, but to dozens of children who'd passed through these doors. I was everyone's grandfather. Everyone's safe place. Everyone's proof that even when the world is cruel, some people still choose kindness. 15 years after Elena's death, I turned 83. James threw me a party at Hope House. Over 100 people came, former residents, current residents, volunteers, friends. The yard couldn't hold everyone, so we spilled into the fields where Elena's wildflowers still grew. Tommy gave a speech. He'd graduated college and was now working as a social worker, helping kids like he used to be find homes like he'd found. When I met Walter, Tommy said, I'd lived in 7 foster homes. I'd been rejected, abandoned, and told I was too broken to love. I believed it. I believed I'd never have a real family. Then this stubborn old man showed me what family really means. Not biology. Not obligation. Just choice. Choosing every day to show up, to care, to love even when it's hard. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. "You saved my life, Grandpa Walter. You saved a lot of lives. This house that was supposed to be dead walls? You filled it with so much life that it's still overflowing. And I'm going to spend the rest of my career doing the same thing, giving kids what you gave me. A chance." I couldn't speak, could barely see through my tears. James stood next to me, his arm around my shoulders. "Good job, Dad," he whispered. "Mom would be so proud." That night, after everyone left, I walked through the house one more time. Touched the walls Elena had painted. Stood in the kitchen where she'd cooked thousands of meals. Sat in the garden where she'd died. "We did it," I told her ghost. "We took this house you loved and turned it into something that matters. Something that lasts." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of her roses. "I miss you every day," I continued. "But I'm not as lonely anymore. Because you're here. In every child who finds safety in your bedroom. In every meal cooked from your recipes. In every laugh that fills your living room." I looked up at the stars. James came back. He found his way. He's a good man. A good father. You'd love Tommy. He's got your kindness and your stubborn hope. A shooting star streaked across the sky. "I know," I said, smiling. "You already know. You've been watching the whole time." I lived another 3 years after that. 3 years of watching Hope House thrive. 3 years of watching James and Tommy build their family. 3 years of helping children find their way home. On my final Tuesday, because of course it was a Tuesday, I sat on the porch swing with James. "I'm tired, son," I said. He knew what I meant. "I know. I've been fighting this cancer for a long time. I think I'm ready to stop fighting. Dad. I'm not scared. I'm ready to see your mother again. To tell her everything. To show her what we built from her dream." James was crying, but he nodded. Okay, Dad. Promise me something. Anything. Keep this place going. Keep helping these kids. Keep being the man your mother raised you to be. I promise." And James? Thank you. For coming back. For learning. For becoming someone worthy of Tommy's love. I had a good teacher. We sat there as the sun set, listening to the children play inside the house. Elena's house. Everybody's house. That night, I went to sleep in James's guest room, surrounded by my family. I didn't wake up. They buried me next to Elena, in the small cemetery on the edge of town. The whole community came. Over 200 people. Children I'd helped, now grown with children of their own. Volunteers who'd become friends. Linda and the current residents of Hope House. James gave the eulogy. My father taught me that home isn't walls and property, he said. It's love made visible. It's sacrifice transformed into purpose. It's choosing every day to do what's right instead of what's easy. He lost his wife and almost lost himself. He lost his son, lost me when I chose greed over family. But he didn't let those losses destroy him. He turned grief into hope. He turned an empty house into a home for hundreds of children who needed one. My father was stubborn, difficult, sometimes maddeningly principled. James smiled through his tears. But he was also brave. He was kind. He was the kind of man who'd rather die alone than compromise his values. And in the end, he didn't die alone at all. He died surrounded by more family than most people dream of. Tommy stood up. Can I say something? James nodded. Tommy walked to the front, his voice strong despite his tears. Walter saved my life. Not with money or grand gestures. He saved me by showing me that I mattered. That my mistakes didn't define me. That family is something you choose and build and protect. Because of him, I had a father. Because of him, I had a home. Because of him, I learned that broken things can be transformed into something beautiful. He looked at the casket. Thank you, Grandpa Walter. For everything. In his will, I left Hope House to a trust, ensuring it would continue operating long after I was gone. James and Marcus were on the board, along with Linda and several former residents. The farmhouse would never be sold. Never be demolished. Never be reduced to a dollar amount. It would keep doing what Elena had always dreamed, giving children a place to call home. My personal belongings were few. But there was one thing I left specifically for James. Elena's blue recipe box. Inside, along with her recipes, I'd written a letter. James, *, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I hope I lived long enough to see you truly happy. I hope I lived long enough to see Marcus grow into the man I know he'll become. *. This recipe box was your mother's most treasured possession. Every recipe in here represents a memory, a holiday, a celebration, a moment of love made tangible through food. *. I'm giving it to you not just so you can make her cookies or her pot roast. I'm giving it to you as a reminder. *. A reminder that love is about showing up. About doing the work. About following the recipe even when it's complicated. *. You followed a bad recipe for a while? One that said success meant money and property and status. That recipe left you bankrupt and broken. *. But then you learned your mother's recipe. The one that says love is patient. Love is work. Love is choosing to show up every day even when it's hard. *. You became the man she always knew you could be. And I'm so proud to have been your father. *. Keep helping those kids. Keep building your family with Marcus. Keep following the recipe your mother spent her whole life perfecting. *. And on Tuesdays, always on Tuesdays, make her chocolate chip cookies. Share them with the children at Hope House. Tell them about the woman who believed that a house full of love was the greatest treasure in the world. *. She was right. I love you, son. I'm proud of you. And I'll be watching, just like Mom has been watching all along. That. 20 years after my death, Hope House celebrated its 35th anniversary. James was 62, retired from his warehouse job but still volunteering every Tuesday. Tommy was 37, running 3 group homes across the state, all modeled after Hope House. The farmhouse had been designated a historic landmark. Hundreds of children had passed through its doors. Dozens had gone on to college. Several had started their own nonprofit organizations helping at-risk youth. Elena's garden was tended by the current residents, a rotating group of children who learned about patience and care by watching things grow. The porch swing had been replaced twice but never removed. Because everyone knew that's where Walter and Elena had sat for 43 years, planning their dreams. On that anniversary Tuesday, Tommy brought his own adopted daughter, a 7-year-old named Elena, after the grandmother she'd never meet. Little Elena ran through the house, laughing and playing, filling the rooms with joy. James watched her, tears in his eyes. They're both here, aren't they? He said to Tommy. Mom and Dad. Watching. They never left, Tommy replied. This house holds them. Their love. Their sacrifice. Everything they built. That evening, Tommy made Elena's chocolate chip cookies using the recipe from the blue box. He served them to the children at Hope House, telling them about a woman who died in this garden and a man who turned his grief into something beautiful. The children listened, eating their cookies, sitting in a home that proved love was stronger than loss. And if you were very quiet, very still, you might hear it. The creak of the porch swing moving in the breeze. The sound of floorboards settling like someone walking through beloved rooms. The faint echo of humming, an old song half remembered, full of hope. The dead walls had become living memory. And in that transformation, two souls found immortality. Not in stone or monuments, but in every child who found safety here. In every family built from broken pieces. In every Tuesday that smelled like chocolate chip cookies and second chances. The house that almost became my grave became a cradle instead. And that, I think, is the whole point of living. Not to avoid death, but to create so much life that death becomes just another Tuesday. Just another day in a house that never stops humming.